Philippines has filed since 2022 245 diplomatic protests for China's attacks and dangerous behavior in the West Philippine Sea, our 200-mile canal zone. Mr. Chairman, this year alone, 47 protest notes because China's vessels have been water cannoning and ramming our Philippine vessels and laser targeting our Philippine Coast Guard ships. I call on all our members of the Iba'T to join the Philippines in urging China to follow international law for the stability and peace of our region. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I think even government, as I have said, they don't always know what happened. So sometimes they do make some mistakes. But I think the government should be very cautious to release the information. So that's my point, is that when you face very clear truths and facts, such as the land accumulation at the Wilson Reef and Sambila Reef, it is totally wrong. It's very easy to verify whether it is or not. So Jen mentioned the video. Even video have different angles. You have videos, China have videos. So I think for third parties, we need to combine to analyzing based on different statements from related parties and the different information released by different parties. Then we maybe have a much balanced and accurate analyzing of the situation. To a situation of the rule-based of international water or international law-based of water, yes, in China, we prefer to say international-based of water because rule, what kind of rule? Which rule? The rule is not certain, so we prefer to use the term of international-based of water. But even international law, different countries have different interpretations. So there are some ambiguity. That's true. Thanks.
I have a question for Dr. Hubo. You mentioned in your presentation that the Philippines should stop giving Beijing chances. And based on your job and your work at the South China Sea Probing Institute at the Peking University, the role of your organization is to promote peace and stability and practical cooperation through studies that you conduct in the South China Sea. And one of the findings of your organization is that the Philippines should stop provoking China because these provocations are leading to tensions. So, given the findings of your organization, my question is, the intention of the Philippines in Scarborough Shoal has always been to support our fishermen. And are you saying, therefore, that we should start supporting our fishermen who go to Scarborough Shoal so that there will be no incidents that will lead to tensions in the West Philippine Sea? That's my first question. My second question is that you mentioned about third-party validation of actions in the West Philippine Sea. And in your presentation, you said even governments can make mistakes. So the premise is the Philippine government makes mistakes, the Chinese government makes mistakes, and when we release information to the public, it cannot be trusted because it is in accordance with the national interest. Therefore, would it be possible, would China agree to third-party validation? Meaning, would you, because we in the Philippines already allow third-party media to board our ships in conducting missions in the West Philippine Sea, would you think the Chinese government would allow third-party media also to board your ships? If you don't like CNN or BBC or Western media, perhaps Singapore media, like CNA, or Malaysian media, would China be willing to do that? We will allow them in our ships, you will allow them in your ships, and then let them make the discovery to the world in accordance with transparency. Thank you.
First of all, I want to emphasize that South China Sea dispute is very complicated, and we have claimants have complicated and different claims. So we have to be cautious that I think In our lifetime, maybe next generations and next generations, we couldn't see the final resolution of the disputes. But we can manage the situation. And the dialogue definitely is very important. Even this kind of dialogue, China is the target, but I think it's also valuable for exchange information and ideas and points. And also, even between China and the Philippines, in the last 3 years of conflicts, China and the Philippines also use the diplomatic channel to calm down the situation of Sex Thomas Show and Sambila Show. So we should encourage this kind of operations and diplomacy. And as to the China's policy on the South China Sea, I'm always talking that China's policy has never been changed. I think consistent ever since 1990s of Deng Xiaoping doctrine of sharing disputes. And now I think China's policy also wants to keep in the status quo. So why China is so serious on Philippines is because I think that the Philippines show an intention to occupy new uninhabited features such as Sambila Shoal, Sandy Cay, and also the Philippines interference, the Taiwan questions, I think is the bottom line of China. So that makes the situation much complicated. And as to the publicity, I think actually China's public are not satisfied with our government's policy on the South China Sea. The public thinks that China's operations are too soft. Even we are so powerful, but we are too soft. So my point is that China is always keeping self-restraint. If without China's self-restraint, I think there are no peace and stability of the South China Sea. China values the stability and the peace of the South China Sea and Southeast Asia, I think, very highly. You will see the statements, you will see the leaders' voice and views. I think it's very clear. We want to have the peace and the stability of the South China Sea. We want to keep the status quo, but we couldn't accept the new northeast if any party wants to challenge China, so for instance, wants to occupy new uninhabited features. I think China has no choice but to respond. So if the publicity, so I don't think that if China publish the information as the Philippines does, as to the South China Sea incidents, I think there are no peace between China and the Philippines. I'm very frankly. So my final point is about the disinformation. So we have a different claims, different understanding, and different perspective on the South China Sea, on the specific features. So it makes sense that we have different ideas on that. We have different interpretations on that. This is not disinformation. The disinformation is that, but we should communicate, we should criticize each other based on truth and facts. Thanks. I should stop here.
Second question about the crisis management. How the battle of narrative affect the crisis management between the Philippines and the People's Republic of China? First of all, I wouldn't agree when people say it's just a battle of narrative between the Philippines and the People's Republic of China as to what is happening in the West Philippine Sea. Because it is not just about narrative. It is a fight or a battle between what is factual and what is propaganda. Dr. Trisha mentioned a while ago that in order for us to check on the factual information, we need to partner with media, the civil society, the academic. All of this we have already carried out. We partnered with media, not just our local, but even international, we have allowed them to be boarded on our vessels for them to witness and tell the story to the world firsthand about the Chinese aggression. So it's not a battle of narrative, it's a battle between the lies and the truthful actions that the Chinese government is doing in the West Philippine Sea. So I'm very confident to respond to this because for the Philippine government, I wouldn't believe that we are publishing untrue statement or, as what Dr. Hu said, fabricated videos to support our claim. We do that because we partner with the media, local and international media. You know, when we first did the transparency effort, it was only the Philippine Coast Guard was documenting all these incidents. And the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, ended up with their own line saying that the Philippines is using propaganda to paint the People's Republic of China negatively to the eyes of the international community. So we made a calibration. We embedded journalists and not just relying on our crew to document all this. And then they, again, came up with another excuse saying that the Philippines is making use of their own nationalist journalists. So we made another calibration. We embedded international media from Japan, Australia, Germany, France, United States, all of those countries who would be willing to document all this. Let me highlight the fact that the Philippines is not an authoritarian state. We are a democratic country. We respect freedom of the press. We respect freedom of expression. And to counter that the Philippines is coming up with those reproduction of those imaginative to paint China as a bad guy, I don't think that is actually the real scenario in the West Philippine Sea. Those media, journalists from from other countries who are also having that independent editorial story will be the witnesses to tell who's telling a lie and who's fabricating their own narrative.